Hey, there I am. Sláinte, y'all. Welcome Tuesday. I'm just saying I've been medicated. So there's my slow on the uptick. Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to another Tuesday night live, Scotch on the Bayou. A week or so back, last Tuesday when we were on, I wasn't even back 24 hours from Scotland. Had a fabulous time, of course, at the Glasgow Whiskey Festival, seeing all kinds of friends, and picked up this lovely cold. So, bear with me as I croak through tonight. Hopefully, not too much coughing and hacking. You would have thought, with the amount of high octane whiskey I had that week, it would have killed all the germs, but evidently not. It was something I got on the way in. But getting better, feeling a lot better because we've got Turkey Day coming up, of course, Thanksgiving this Thursday. So it's a great time to get together, say thank you. So let me start off first and foremost by thanking everyone for all the support of the channel, the support of me, just all the camp drammers. We have new camp drammers, and we've got let's see, we've got Chris Jenkins and Brian Murphy, and also Tom, you know him as Whiskey and Wine Trails. He's doing the tasting tonight, so he can't be on live, but I know he'll be watching the replay. All the camp drummers help so much in supporting the channel. So I really wanted just to say, not just for Thanksgiving, but all the time, thanks so much for the support and encouragement and ideas and all of those things. So it really does help. Um, I mean, I do the channel because I want to, and because I feel like, there's enough area out there and a platform to be able to talk and get excited about whiskey, but you all really do make it happen. And speaking of, let's see who else in. I know our friend Graham piped in early. He's I'm glad he's sleeping because he's headed to Isla tomorrow. You get a pass, bud. You get a pass. It's okay. Catch it on the replay. And James is here. Of course, he knows as well. Isla without him. Wish we could all go see Isla through Graham Fraser's eyes. That's for sure. Mark JG is in here, and so is Sugar Kitty. Hey, friend. And James, I'm so glad that you are here, and welcome for your first real live. Thanks again for the support, my friend. Good seeing you here. Yeah, Sugar Kitty, if you could hit the likes, those always help that algorithm and all that thing. Um, my bud, we've been texting already this evening. Hey, Jennifer, thanks for being here. As always, I'm excited, especially for you to be here to see our guest that we haven't seen in a good while. Like we met, and it was just like we've known them all our lives. It seems like. But yeah, so yeah, James, we're going to be talking about the Lighthouse here in a bit. And yes, I'm afraid your Patriots Lighthouse is a bit dim at the moment. Not glory days as they used to be. Good morning, Andrew. Yes, good 2 a.m. to you there outside London, friend. Thanks for being here. Tater Down is here, and Four Leaf Whiskey, all things Irish. Hey, Stacy, thanks a bunch for being here. Yay, and Trooper. Hey, Trooper, I'm hoping you're home for the holidays and not out in the middle of the Gulf on a rig. So, cheers to you, my friend. Mike's in. Hey, cheers, everybody. Martin Whiskey Franco. All my peeps are here. Mark Broda is here. What? Did I see that? Yay. Um, Good seeing everybody. Donner Pass, yay. Are you working? Somebody's gonna I'll have a dream for you. I promise, Donner. Absolutely. We'll do that. Yeah. So we are talking tonight about Glenmorangie. And y'all know kind of how I feel about this particular distillery. And it's just solid. If you go back and look at the best whiskeys for beginners that I did, which is my most 2-year-old video, and it's still getting hits like crazy. two of those recommendations are Glenmorangie, and it's because it's a really good product. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I'm afraid this is going to happen a couple times. So just super solid core range. Back in January, you might remember Jennifer and I went to the Victoria Whiskey Festival. Absolutely stunning event. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And we met the most effervescent, delightful, fabulous person who truly I feel like I've known forever. And I would like to bring him on now. And that would be this fella right here. I see him smiling. And Bry Simpson, everybody, welcome. Welcome, Whiskey Bry on Instagram. Hey, friend.
Hi, Leanne. It's amazing to see you and amazing to see everyone. I got some familiar names there already. So, hi, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic evening.
Oh, here, let's bring this up a little bit. Cool. Thank you for being on. So Bry is the national brand ambassador for not only Glenmorangie, but also Ardbeg for Canada. Hence, we met him at the Victoria, BC Whiskey Festival. And but you might detect a little bit there that is not exactly a Canadian accent. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I do live in Canada. I'm very proud to be a Canadian permanent resident, but I'm originally from Scotland. I'm from just outside Glasgow, in a place called Lanarkshire, but we pronounce it Lanarkshire. So it's for a few people there who've been over to Scotland. Lanarkshire's got a very famous restaurant and bar called Artisan, but I see myself just as much a Glaswegian. And some of our mutual friends, Leanne, we probably met at some of those famous bars there as well.
Yeah, we were just talking earlier about the Bonaccord. You know, I mean, it's one of those, the pot still and the Bonaccord. I will say that I've never had to buy my own drink in Ben Nevis. The Southern accent comes out, and man, the drinks were just a flowing.
I've never had that luxury, I must say.
Well, let me tell you, I didn't turn down a thing because that would be terribly rude. But yeah, so we just it was awesome. So Jennifer and I both did your presentation on Ardbeg at the festival, and just, you don't know it yet. I'm going to put you on the spot, but you're coming back after the first of the year at some point for us to talk to Ardbeg, and probably we'll have to get Jennifer because she is an absolute Ardbeg fiend. She's a big fangirl. We did an entire video on about 5, I think, Jennifer, was it like 5 of the committee releases? It was an hour and a half of tape that I had to like smush down to 45 minutes, you know, but we were having the best time going through the committee releases and all. It was just awesome. Excuse me. So I need some whiskey to like help some things go down. So what are we starting off with tonight?
Well, I know that we've got a mutual favourite, or one of our mutual favourites here from the Glenmorangie range is our sherry cask finish, the 12 years old La Santa. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Almost like we planned this, Leanne? Almost like we planned this.
I just and I have the old school bottlings and the branding. But yeah, here we go. Yeah. Love the sound. And I'm pouring this in my 2023 Victoria Whiskey Festival.
Oh, wow. I've got mine in my... So, as you know, Leanne, I'm still part of a infamous whiskey club in Scotland. They still let me join, even from Canada. So I've got my Hip Flask Hiking Club glass. It's not going to work on this, I don't think. There we are.
Yeah, it is. There you go. Your Hip Flask Hiking Club. Yeah. Right?
So that's my whiskey club, which is based in Scotland, and I'm very proud that it still allows me to be a member all the way over here in Canada.
And I got to meet your buddy Graham.
Yeah. Graham and I.
in the wee
Yeah.
hours.
He pretty much lives there, I think, even though he lives in Inverness. I think they just let him stay on the couch overnight when they get to Glasgow. But that's the Bon Accord. Honestly, it's when I'm in Scotland, like it's one of the first places I go to. Where I learned about whiskey wasn't necessarily initially through books. My love of whiskey came from actually enjoying it with my friends in bars, and the Bon Accord, having Thomas and Paul that's there, and the rest of the staff. Yeah. Honestly, they're the people who got me started in this, and just not necessarily just having a selection, but how people talk about it is really important, and how welcoming it is, and it's really the key. So
absolutely,
I'm glad that you met like one of my best mates in Graham. You met the whiskey club, and you also did it at my favorite place in Glasgow, the Bon Accord.
It was so funny. So I posted or something. You saw that I was there or something. Phone was blowing up. It was post festival. So we had gone to the early session in the festival. We'd gone to Akbar's. 102 people bussed to Akbar's, had amazing curry, lamb chops, naan bread hanging off of these stands that were just amazing. I mean, they were like big as 3 people's head. I mean, it was just huge.
Yeah, that's why you always see it, Leanne. You see like people going out, and in their purse they've got like half an naan bread still coming out, as if they've stolen it from the restaurant.
I could, I mean, like it almost looked like a weapon. It was big. It's like this Christmas tree thing with this chunk of bread hanging off of it. Best bread, best naan I've ever had. And then we get and just walk around the corner, of course, then to the pot still from Akbar's. And I love it because it's
pot still.
Yeah, the pot. No, I'm sorry, the Bon Accord from Akbar's. That's a pot still. Sorry.
Yeah, easily getting mixed up. Both of them are just as good as each other.
They're
legendary.
One's that side, one's that side. The pot still was very close to where I was staying, so I'd hit it a couple of times. It's so tiny though. I love it, but it's tiny. The Bon Accord, you can spread out a little bit. You got that little spot in the back, and so you're like, my people are there. So I just went out in the back, and he's like, Graham's there. He's got a t-shirt on, and he's got a kilt on, and I'm like, 1 kilt, 2 kilt, 3 kilt, 4 kilt. Any y'all Graham? Well, that could be like 4 of them right there. A Graham, a Fraser, or an Alistair. I swear, it's like you got them all covered. But yeah, and this guy said, "Would you happen to be Graham?" He goes, "Hi, I'm Graham." I was like, my buddy Bry says, "Hey," and he goes, "Wow," So we had to send you the selfie. Of course, it didn't happen until the selfie happened, right?
Exactly. I've never felt so famous.
You are. That won't buy you any coffee though, or a dram. Well, it might buy you a dram. I don't know. So yeah, the Losato. So just tell us about. I think one of the things I wanted to talk about, especially with Glenmorangie, I think most people, especially in the States, that go just to their regular, kind of liquor buying place. It might be a grocery store for us. Our liquor departments in grocery stores are pretty robust down here. But wherever your provider is, your retailer, they may be more familiar with just what Glenmorangie's core range is. But even that, I think, is above and beyond most of the big boys, as I would put it. So tell me a little bit more about that. Why did you even decide to rep something like Glenmorangie?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that you've spoke about. We do have this kind of classic whiskey, which is the Glenmorangie 10 original. Mm-hmm. And, so many people, I've seen a few people in the comments there already, like it's a whiskey a lot of people start with, but you never forget it. And it's always a fantastic whiskey to go back to. I was actually recently doing my WSET free courses and speaking to the tutor, and he said when it comes to them doing their education on single malt, their example of a single malt Scotch whisky is Glenmorangie Original, which is such a massive thing, but it's a common story. And the thing that I love about the rest of the core range, so we have the 12 years old La Santa, the 14 years old Quinta Rubin, and the Nectar d'Or, as well as some of our prestige items like the 18 years old and Signet. In terms of the 12, 14 and the Nectar d'Or, they all started as experiments. You know, it's not as if it's just like you press the button in the whiskey factory and they were released. Even the version of Lasanta that we're enjoying just now has changed over the years. And I remember trying the first version of Lasanta that started its life in American oak barrels, 10 years, pretty much the Glenmorangie 10 that a lot of people know and love. Then transferred and cast finished into Oloroso sherry barrels. But later on, the whiskey makers were trying to not necessarily just compete to be the best, they were trying to be different. And that's when they actually experimented using not only Oloroso sherry barrels, but the Pedro Jimenez sweet sherry barrels. And it's not something that we don't really shout enough about, I don't think, is that the fact that this is essentially two different whiskies brought together, like one Oloroso cast finish, one Pedro Jimenez cast finished, and then brought together again. And it gives you this wonderful balance of sweetness and spice.
It really does. I mean, when you explain to somebody, okay, this is their sherry finished version, you know, but it's not a sherry bomb. You know, it's not this just like, whoa, is there whiskey in here because this tastes like a lot of sherry. You know, this, it's just, it is, you get a nice sweetness. It's very balanced. Going back to your 10, that is quintessential Highland Scotch to me. That's your bourbon mature. That's it. And I talk about this a lot. You know, I have to go back to center after a while. I'll get on a peat kick, and then I have to come back to center. I'll get off on a sherry kick or a different type of wine maturation kick, and then I have to come back to center. And most times it's going to be with Glenmorangie 10 or Deanston 12, or if I want a little bit of a saltier, maltier, I'll go Old Pulteney 12. I mean, but what it's doing, they're always those upper Highland malts, right? It just is quintessential Scotch to me.
I think having that base of Glenmorangie 10 is such an amazing thing for the whiskey makers to build upon, because when you've got that consistency, and it's something Glenmorangie is known for, is these two things. It's like having the consistency, but also not being scared to experiment and having distinctive flavors that sometimes they're new to Glenmorangie, and the whiskey makers aren't scared to do that, but also keeping it somehow in the house style of Glenmorangie, of these very approachable, elegant, but really expressive single malts. So the Lasanta for me it's an awful lot. An awful lot of things, but I would probably say it's interesting when people say Glenmorangie 10. That's like the introduction for a lot of people for whiskey. I would 100% agree with that. What I would say though, see if there's anyone that's maybe more already in the whiskey world, but maybe not Scotch, maybe in the bourbon world or American whiskey. See if you like that idea of that balance of sweetness and spice. Don't be scared to jump in with the 12 years old. I think it's got a little bit more richness than the 10, but it still has that lovely, approachable, fruity and sweet, and as I said, spicy flavors as well.
So you bring up a really good point, because I'm in a very bourbon-centric world down here. We even have a street in New Orleans named after it, you know, that kind of thing. And because of that, and even the club that I'm part of, you know, it's very bourbon, very bourbon. We have a really strong niche group of Scotch folks. But when we have bottle shares, I'll invariably bring a Glenmo, because I want people to try different things. If they're really into rye, I'll get them to try Lasanta.
Yeah, for sure.
If they're really into bourbons, and especially finished bourbons, I'll get them to go to Kenta Reuben.
Yeah.
And because that sweet balance of that just and invariably they're like, this is Scotch. This is what Scotch tastes like. It's not peated. And then I just want to shake them, you know, just like, no, it's not all peated, you know.
It's interesting. We have that here in Canada. You know, a lot of people who are, as a massive amount of people who are American whiskey fans, but we also have Canadian whiskey, which I still understand hasn't really hit maybe to what it deserves in America. But there's these transitions between each of the categories. And I would definitely say that with Glenmorangie, as you said, the Lasanta and the Quinta, fantastic transitions between both of those categories into there. But as I say, they started as experiments. And I think that's really cool because, you know, when I started drinking Glenmorangie, this whiskey we're trying just now didn't exist. So, and it's still got the same name as when I tried it, but it's always changing. And it's something like with Glenmorangie, they're always trying to fine-tune and perfect the whiskies, even if they already are highly acclaimed and even in a business sense, selling pretty well. And part of that is because the whiskey makers, they're in control. So the whiskey makers have so much freedom. Maybe not every company has that kind of freedom when it comes to, here's a concept that one of our three whiskey makers has, and they're allowed to run with it as far as it goes. And I think it's a pretty cool thing.
It is. I think some people kind of get hung up on, well, it doesn't taste like it used to. Well, you don't have the same cask. You don't have a lot of things that used to, So it's important, I think, and I think it's good in the transparency of it's going to be different. It's going to be different. You're going to try different things. Definitely, innovation is not something that y'all shirked around, and being around. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of, and the interesting thing, Leanne, as well, is so when I actually got the job, I've been in the job coming up for 6 years. If I make it to April, fingers crossed, if I make it to April,
I think you will. I think you're safe.
So, when I joined the company, like I had it because I love Glenmorangie and Ardbeg, but so much of it was to do with the actual whiskey itself, And for a lot of people, the whiskey is all that matters, and realistically, that's a huge, beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. But I remember hearing one or two things in terms of the history of it on the lead up to me getting the job. I'm like, there's more of this than what I thought. And the idea of experimentation is something that's not just a new thing. Like the distillery itself started in 1843. It was a family that started, so not just one individual person. But the amount of things that happened at the distillery in the late 1800s that were pretty groundbreaking at the time, and even if you look back on it, they've become kind of commonplace. Some of the apparatus used, for example, including our massive copper pot stills, the giraffe-sized stills that are quite famous for us, that was all way back in the late 1800s. And the fact that kind of idea of doing things differently, it's kind of stayed all the way through Glenmorangie. And it's only learning about the distillery after getting the job and having the access to some of the archive we have. It's not just a niche thing. It's not sort of following a trend. Everyone's experimenting now. The fact that it's been going on for over 175 years, it's a real honor to look after this distillery in Canada.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's it's an absolutely stunning place. For those geographically, kind of go up towards Inverness, go a little further north, and you're on the East Coast. It's just a beautiful seascape area. Just north of there, you've got Brora and Kleinleash up in that area, Dornoch in that area too. And just, I could have spent so much time there. I could have just spent, a whole lot more time. But when you think about that was one of the things I wanted to ask. I found it interesting that it could be that close to the sea, but you don't really have a whole lot of sea influence. How much is, as far as the maturation, is done close to there, or is it away from that area?
No, it's actually on site. The interesting thing is
I thought it was, but
so the interesting thing about the idea of do you get coastal influence because you're next to the water? It seems to be that if you do, you talk about it, but it doesn't seem consistent for every distillery that's on the coast or next to the water. I don't know the answer. I genuinely don't. But what I would say is there is an old bottling of Glenmorangie that some of your viewers there may know of, and it's called Cellar 13. And this one here got famous because there was a little bit of salinity, a little bit of minerality that you don't really always get in Glenmorangie. And part of that is because this warehouse itself, they never used to close the door. And a lot of the time, more likely the air is going to be getting in, as opposed to the bigger warehouses, where for the most part, it's kind of closed off. So you do hear of stories in terms of how it makes a difference. I have tried that Glenmorangie, and there is a fair bit more mineral character to it. So I think there's a lot more variables involved. But you're right, in terms of us, we're right on the Dornoch Firth. It's a beautiful place to enjoy a dram. And I think that when you go up the road to Old Pulteney, again, not too far from us, and you do get a little bit more, as they say, the maritime character from there. So it kind of shows you, as always in whiskey, not all the answers are solved, and that's part of the magic of it.
exactly. Man. Uh, I was gonna attempt to get up to Wick, but I was like, no, I can't do all that in one day. I mean, because for us, especially probably coming over here on this side of the ocean, driving's nothing now, right? You just drive everywhere. And I was like, I can make it to Wick, then I'll come back down to Glenmorangie, then I'll make it to Speyside in one day. No, so that's for another time where I can spend a lot of good times there. So we got. Let me chat over here again a little bit. Mark Broda. So you may not know this guy's name, but he's a fan. Glenmo 10 Foundational. So, Bry, this is one of my buddies who's one of the 4 Scotch for Dummies
Oh,
channel.
wonderful.
So he's a big fan for sure. Um, my buddy Mark JG Kent Rubens, what got him into the whiskey. So that was his gateway, as we call it. It's the gateway Scotch.
Yeah, we need to be
come
careful about that sometimes because it's got connotations. But yeah, I think we're okay for now to use that.
come hither, right? 391.93. Hey, you are getting to appreciate some Isla Scotch and come running to report it, only to see that we're talking about Glenmo today. Yay! Um, I'll say hey and your former coworker. Oh, hey, good to see you. Awesome. So, see Martin Fielder's in. Great to be here, buddy. Gosh, all kinds of. So Donner's talking about a couple years ago spent too much of the early '80s. Glenmo 10, 43% a bottle. Should have spent more on getting those old ones, I guess. So yeah, it's interesting. I do like picking up older ones and kind of trying. I know Bart Broda's got some older versions, 70s and 80s versions of Scotch. And it is interesting to see how they're different. And different is different. Different doesn't necessarily mean better. I mean, everybody's palate is different. But yeah, I mean, interesting on that for sure.
Essentially, so this is the thing that always happens, and I'm one of the Scotch community and a total Scotch geek, so I understand it. But sometimes you try whiskies from the past, and you've got the equivalent you're trying of the modern one, and you can't help but get romantic, and you'll say, "Was the older one better?" And
Mhm.
some of the times that is. The interesting thing with ourselves is that our whiskey has got better in terms of like individual parts of it. Like when I started
Yeah.
drinking Glenmorangie. It's a fair bit of time now, and I'm getting old. It's a fair bit of time now, and I remember like really enjoying it for sure. And however, now there's certain things that have happened at the distillery that have changed up. So a couple of decades ago, and we'll speak about it, I think, in a little second.
Yeah.
We actually started to do experiments with a company in Missouri, and they themselves got access to these incredible barrels that were air dried instead of kiln dried.
Yeah.
And it really showed off a lot more of that kind of sweet ginger flavour on the Glenmorangie Original. Also, as well, we have our small little farm called Cadball Farm, which is on our estate. And I remember hearing this, Leanne. So I got the job. I didn't know this. I didn't know like we had a farm. And in my head, I'm like, a farm? Like, can't wait to go. And there's acres and acres and acres and acres. And I got there, and it's just this adorable little farm. And I think it's only one farmer that's after it. But it allows the whiskey makers to play around with some of these more experimental barley varietals and have that control.
Yeah.
And even now, we've even got our own yeast strain as well. So one of the most nerdy and things I say at my whiskey tastings to impress people and have them pretend, so I can pretend that I know what I'm talking about, is to say that the majority of yeast strain, the biggest yeast strain we'll use for Scotch whiskey, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, is something we will use. But we also have our very own yeast strain called Saccharomyces diamath, which translates as God is good. And those things there are something that didn't happen, in like the 1970s or 1980s. It's the fact that they say that idea of the whiskey makers come up with concepts and ideas to kind of push things forward is something that when you compare Glenmorangie 10 years old original now to ones that were bottled in the 1980s and 90s, there is a difference.
Yeah.
It's not huge unless you compare them maybe side by side. But they all taste like Glenmorangie 10 years old, if that makes sense. But there are some differences in there. And for me, there's a bit more texture now, and maybe a little bit more of a gingery finish as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, there back then, I think like the whole industry, it seems, certainly I wasn't into whiskey back then, and I was legal back then, part of it. Anyway, it's just it just was output, and I'm not saying Glenmorangie, but I'm just saying it's Scotch in general. And I don't know, you would think maybe that downturn in the 80s got everybody thinking, okay, maybe the mousetrap needs some tweaking, and being able to do that along the way. It just seems like, as far as the core range, especially, going from the 10 all the way to the Signet. So I can't, we'll go to this view real quick because over here, right there is my bottle of Signet. That was our wedding anniversary to ourselves. We had a very big anniversary a couple of years ago, and that was our anniversary. I mean, that's the bottle I wanted to celebrate. That big of a deal to be married as long as we have been, and to not only love but like one another. That deserved a bottle of Signet. I mean, it's just, I mean, I'm just telling you. I know we had a little conversation earlier. We're not going to talk about, but I'm just saying, loving them's one thing, liking them's another, and truly that I wanted something so very unique to how odd we are. But that chocolate malt, that absolute indulgent richness of Signet is just amazing. I was looking at James here is talking about being on a cruise, and every night he had a dram of Signet. And I was like, that's a hell of a way to be on a cruise, man, is having that in your glass every night. But the whole range, to me, when you look at the big boys and you look at the larger scaled brands, because you all put out a ton of whiskey every year, consistently across the board, it's my favorite. And I mean, the other ones, the other Glens don't even come close. We know who they are, bless their hearts, but they don't come close in my book. I enjoy them, but for bottle to bottle to bottle, I'm not ever going to feel bad about saying this is a bottle for you. This is a bottle that you could do, and to recommend it to somebody. And I think that says a lot for your process and the values at which you want to make sure your product is coming out.
Yeah, it means a lot coming from you, Leanne, obviously, like with your amazing palate and all your expertise. And I'm a bit more diplomatic. I myself, obviously, I would say Glenmorangie is the best for sure, but I wouldn't possibly say disrespect any of the other Glens. They're all fantastic as well.
And again, it's just one opinion. Like, it's just one opinion. I mean, in our particular palates are all different. We're about to have our Thanksgiving. I know Canada had their Thanksgiving in October, right?
Yep.
Well, ours is, of course, Thursday, and not everybody's going to like everything that's at the table, but there's nothing wrong with all that. It just depends on what you like. If you don't like Brussels sprouts, pass them along and grab something else. Get the macaroni
I read
and
that
cheese.
completely wrong, Leanne. I thought like your Thanksgiving just got lots of whiskey that's on the table and doing it himself.
We could do that.
Thanksgivings are definitely different in America.
We could do that. It's funny. I know that I saw a comment about from Andrew was talking about the 4-pack, the original Lasanta, Kintaruban, and Nectar, great for beginners. Absolutely. And and truly understanding our crowd, Bry, we're all kind of diehard enthusiasts that, love the cast strength, everything, but when I'm sharing something with somebody who's brand new, I'm going to give them something I know that they're going to like. And that's why I pop, this bottle and give that to them for sure.
That's a really good point you made there in terms of like the big hitters, really robust whiskies, like which are usually higher ABV. It's definitely something that it definitely exists. And I myself, like a lot of my whiskies that I've got here that I've got to share with friends, a lot of the ones I do have are higher ABV. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting is there's certain whiskies there when you try them, and they are in the lower scale. It's like some of them just hark back to this beautiful time in whiskey when it wasn't necessarily just about the numbers which were on the bottle. And our Glenmorangie 18 years old, for example, I think that's the best counter argument for ABV. It's so expressive, but it's really polished and elegant. But it's like I myself, like a lot of the time when I'm buying whiskey from different brands, I do look at the ABV. But when you try ones that are maybe that little bit lower and approachable, but they're still so vibrant and complex, and they really hit, it shows a lot of how you can still get an awful lot of flavor, even when it's not some of the rocket fuel 60% ones which are out there.
Hazmat. There's a couple of Texas. There's one particular Texas distillery, Iron Root, who they're really proud of their hazmat 67%. Whew. And I've had it. It's tasty, but it'll also take the, skin off your tongue just a little bit there. So the 18. So what is it? It's 43 or 46?
It's 43% for the 18
43.
years old. It's so I've got, again, totally not planned, but I've got one here ready.
Good deal.
Finally getting good at this job, Leanne.
You've been at it for 6 years. I would say you're pretty efficient.
Yeah.
So I told you that we had I have a funny story about the 18. Jennifer can back me up on this. So back in May. Oh man. So one of your fellow countrymen was in town to sing. Louis Capaldi was in Houston, and it was his last of the North America tour was the Houston show. And I was I was about to leave for Scotland for the summer trip. My sweet dog Angel, who always would sit in here and guard my whiskey, was not doing well, and we knew her time was very short. So we go to Louis Capaldi, and everybody's buying these margarita shaker things, and I'm like, there is no way in hell we're drinking a margarita listening to a Glaswegian sing. There's no way. So we went to go see what kind of scotch they had. And I was like, that's a bottle of Glenmo. It's way the hell up on there. I'm like, I can't tell what it is, but by the bottle, I can tell it's Glenmo. And so she got the guy to get it down. And it was a Glenmo 18. It had about that much left in it. He had no idea how much it was. He had to go find the binder to decide how much it was. We're not even going to discuss how much we spent on Glenmo 18. We killed the bottle of Glenmo 18 while we ugly cried to Louis Capaldi singing "Wish You Were Here" about this dog passing away. And I was like, we drank really good whiskey, and we laughed about it afterwards because you have to, But yeah, so that's my that's my Glenmo. It was very tasty. We really enjoyed it. That's for sure.
Yeah, it does show you though. Sometimes it's a place you are, and I don't think there's many people who say that they've been a better place to enjoy a Glenmo 18.
Yeah, with one of my best buddies.
Yeah, I see Jennifer here. It says best concert ever.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we were ugly crying. It was not pretty. It was not. I mean, I like most people, most dogs more than I do a lot of people. So that was really kind of tough. Pretty kind of tough. So you've got the 18. So talk us through the 18 and what you're tasting.
Yeah, I think it's such a, in terms of for Glenmorangie, like when you think of Glenmorangie, I've got probably more books on whiskey than what I do bottles at the moment, and I always like to look back in terms of what people say about some of our whiskies from the past. And Glenmorangie as a whole, even like in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, this word like elegance always comes up, and I think it's quite a cool thing. Like even in the 90s, we actually did release a bottle was called Glenmorangie Elegance to really drive it home. But when that is something that people talk about, it's not by accident, And for me, the 18 years old is the epitome of elegance in Scotch whisky. There's no rough edges on there, but it's still beautifully and expressive. And the hallmarks of Glenmorangie, when you get the balance between some of the floral notes, some of the fruity notes, especially that little hint of orange that just seems to carry through each one of our expressions. And also as well, the lovely creamy viscosity. Like a lot of our whiskies have got that. And yeah, it's just an absolute belter, like the whole way right through it. And I remember actually when I one of the challenges I had when I got the job was, how do you talk about this? Because there's certain whiskies you get when you've got it in front of you, you just drink it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to talk about the ins and outs.
Yeah.
You know, I know myself, Leanne, and you'll know when you go to the Bon Accord and Pot Still, like people don't argue about stuff apart from whiskey at these places. So you get people that have got it. It's like when they maybe try some of these really complex whiskies from Campbellton or something. Like,
right.
Oh yeah, I could really get plasticine from this, and then people are having a fight because you got your tasting notes wrong. Glenmorangie 18 to me is like the other side of it. It's just a whiskey that is just delicious. You know, it's just it's elegant, it's expressive, it's vibrant, it's complex, but you don't necessarily have to try and dissect it to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That makes me want to go get a bottle. Put on and start streaming Louis Capaldi again.
Yeah, but also as well, I think like 18 years old, this is something that I've sort of had for almost an investment. So I buy myself a bottle every year of the Glenmorangie 18 to have at home. And the reason why is you never know, Leanne, do you, when it comes to moments. Right. Good moments, bad moments, and you're with someone. Like sometimes whiskey just follows those moments. You don't know how it happens, but whiskey seems to be involved when it comes to those conversations or celebrations. Right. And 18 years old is always a one for me, because no matter who you're talking to, no one's going to say no to it. Right. But also as well, it's just that kind of like but one you can like. I think it's Roddy Graham from Scotland. I think he called not this whiskey. I wish it was this whiskey. When I used to work at the Good Spirits Company in Glasgow, Roddy said about a whiskey one time, and he said it's a meditation whiskey. And I was like,
okay.
And from then I was like, yeah, I need to use that. And I've stolen his line when I talk about the Glenmorangie 18.
All right. Well, it is. I mean, there's some that you just need to sit and settle with. You know, you need to let it breathe. You need to take the time with it. And I think sometimes, especially YouTubers, are kind of guilty of wanting to really analyze things to the nth degree and come up with some, far-fetching, kind of ambiguous tasting note or whatever. Sometimes, you can explain something about saying what it isn't, and being able to, like the drams we have at the camp, and we call them camp drams, but the whole point is you don't have to be pretentious about this. You don't have to have a white tablecloth in a 5-star Michelin restaurant to drink a scotch. You can be at the end of a pier watching alligators go by and birds flying and Boudreaux in the boat running by and all that kind of stuff, and it'd be okay. I think just being calm with the whiskey, it can evolve itself to you. So I love the idea about the meditation whiskey.
Yeah, so Roddy Graham classic. I don't know if Roddy ever makes it on here, but you should get him on. He's one of the mecca of information and an absolute legend. So
yeah, he's amazing, and most everybody in the chat will know him from. We lost you, Varen.
I think I'm still here. I might disappear for 1 wee second.
I'll bring you back. But yeah, we know Roddy from Aquavitae, right? And his buddy Roddy when he comes on, and they're just an absolute hoot together, and so much whiskey knowledge. So as Bry was saying, he used to work with Roddy at the Good Spirits Company, which is Roddy's whiskey shop, and it is across the street from SMWS in Glasgow. So yeah, it's a whole lot of fun on there. I'm going to catch up with some of the comments and seeing some other folks in here. And where'd it go? Hey Kyle, good to see you. Thanks for being in. Yeah, good to see you there. Major Zero's in. Hey friend. Sean's in. Great bottle for special occasions. I know you're talking about that Signet. Ooh, yeah. Signet is delish. It absolutely is. Thanks, James, for coming in. I appreciate it. Hey, Ross, it's fun. I don't like Brussels sprouts. Take some of the bacon bits. It's funny, friend. Rob's in. Hello. Good to see you too. Hey, Roxanne. I hope you're all well. Angel was an absolute sweetheart. She absolutely was, and I miss her so terribly. You have no idea. But yeah, she absolutely was. So Andrew Sandy recently bought a Glenmo 18 Azuma Makato, which was you think that trains like Hedge in Edinburgh are named after. Okay, Bry's back, so we may need some explanation about that one. Hey, okay, I can't hear you. I can't hear you now, so we'll have to get him back on some some. So
Right,
Bryce,
how about that?
there you go. Now I got you.
Not too bad. I still got it. It's been the first while since I've had to do a live stream, so I've still got it, apparently.
No problem. No problem. So this Glenmo 18 Azuma Mikado. It sounds like another one of your innovations.
Yeah, well, actually, the liquid inside this was actually the same as the classic Glenmorangie 18, but we actually partnered with this incredible artist from Japan, Azuma Makoto, and this was to create the packaging and also the bottle design as well, or the label design on there. And so much of Glenmorangie, you're trying to like sum it up with so much the aroma and flavor of the whiskey, but realistically, when you actually look at the classic Glenmorangie 18 bottle, it's very much towards our very luxurious side, very classic, very much looks like a Highland single malt Scotch whisky, but doesn't necessarily tell you about the character of the spirit.
Yeah.
So Azuma Makoto came along and himself worked with our whiskey creation team for him to maybe get a little bit inspired about the ins and outs of the aroma and flavor of the whiskey. And with that, himself working so much with his artwork to do with flowers, that is absolutely perfect together. So the kind of more floral essence of the 18 years old was kind of showcased with the packaging that it's got. And Azuma Makoto, if you do look, I personally keep up to date on his Instagram, and some of his installations he does are absolutely unreal. So one of my favorites actually is he's out what looks like the tundra, and there's like a tree there. He's got flowers hanging down from it, and then they wet it with water and just let it freeze over there.
Ooh.
He's so creative and an absolute perfect match for Glenmorangie. You know, all these amazing creative whiskey makers we've got. When we partner with people, a lot of the time it's not necessarily, let's just say, the most famous of names, because Azuma Makoto would be known in some niches, but it's someone that actually encapsulates the spirit of the distillery.
Yeah, it matches, the vibe and the thinking of it. Yeah. So let's talk about what I'm drinking is the Glenmorangie A Star.
Yeah. So I spoke earlier about how we have certain projects that go on, and I've seen something in the comments there about the connection to ourselves and America when it comes to our barrels, and the efforts they go through to source some of these air dried barrels is quite unbelievable. I mean, when you've got your barrel being created and you have to chop down the tree, you're essentially drying the wood at that point. The majority of wood is dried in a kiln, and it takes a day. Very time efficient. A day is fine to dry the equivalent of a barrel. However, when you've got a barrel staves that need to be dried to kind of remove some of the harsh tannins and kind of soften the tannins to get more of that kind of elegant style, that's when you air dry it. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, it's worth it, but unfortunately, air drying the barrel takes a bit longer because it takes 2 years. So you're mixing it up from 1 day of a kiln dry and then 2 years of air drying. And to put it kindly, the accountants aren't pleased about this. The accountants are kind of like, can't we just do it?
Investment is a little lagging, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So, but again, it's just that. I mean, we say it quite a lot in our company. It's not a balance when it comes to these things. The idea of the business side versus the creativity, it's not a balance, it's a tension. And our whiskey makers fight for their ideas and amongst some of the accountants and so. And I think it's a really cool way the Star, it was to showcase it. So as opposed to these barrels that are used in, for example, Glenmorangie 10 to some extent, the Star is the showcase because that's actually matured fully in those barrels from the Ozarks in America. I myself don't have that one, so because that was a limited edition,
this is the
it came out in
2017 one.
Yeah, there's 2 batches of it. And you know what's interesting is that the first batch came out and people, I think they just cracked it open and enjoyed it, thinking it was going to be a continuing batch after batch. And it was only 2. So usually doing more than that. We do have, however, what I'm going to talk about, maybe yourselves in the group there who are really like the idea of going out to liquor stores and trying to find the dusties. The whiskey here I'm going to show you is actually batch 3 of a whiskey which is Glenmorangie 15 years old. This here is part of the Cadball Estate series. So this is batch 3. The Cadball Estate series showcases not necessarily the barrels from the Ozarks, but the other part of the building blocks of our Scotch whiskey, and that's the barley. So I spoke about earlier the adorable little farm that we have.
Right.
So on our Glenmorangie Cadball Estate. So the Cadball Estate series is a showcase of that barley, and it's created 100% from our barley that's grown on that farm. And for such a big name in the whiskey world, to still have that kind of like almost like a craft mentality of growing your own barley, it's a pretty cool thing. And the Cadball Estate series started off with the first release being matured exclusively in American oak, the second release being matured exclusively in American oak, and the third release not exclusively in American oak, also using the very unusual Amontillado barrels from Spain. So it's quite a nutty one. So although we are drinking different whiskies, I think it's still that little bit of a line between some of the unusual practices that Glenmorangie do.
Interesting.
Just pouring this just now.
So Roxanne is asking about what Scotch should a bourbon drinker start with, and Roxanne, I'm telling you, it's this one. I mentioned it a while ago, but this is the one that that I suggest to bourbon drinkers who usually like something a little sweeter, and the port finish on this Kinta Reuben is one of my faves for sure. So this comes in a cask strength. Is that still 43 or 46?
This one here's 43.
It's 43.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of our special releases will be 46. We have this incredible series called A Tale of.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are, at the moment, Tale of Cake was the first one, using these incredible Tokai barrels from Hungary. That was to create like a whiskey with the aroma, flavor, and also a bit of the texture of a specific type of cake, which is quite incrable. Dr. Bill Lumsden in a nutshell. It's like, I have this idea.
Dr. Bill is like the mad scientist. I mean, he's absolutely adorable when I catch pieces of him and he's talking and he's so excited about what he's going to be doing. And he has that kind of, I'm a little mad, but it's okay because good whiskey is going to come out of this.
I think it's such an interesting thing when you get Bill actually focused in on talking about his whiskies. It's the best thing. I mean, he goes off on other things, and we're trying to always come back to Bill. We're here to talk about the whiskey. But the three of the characters we have in our whiskey creation team are brilliant. I mean, they all call themselves whiskey makers. There's different titles in terms of what they do.
But talk about the team. So we hear about Dr. Bill. It's kind of like doing the R&D, maybe I would assume. But you have the core group that is this whiskey creation team that you've talked about.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of like the three of them, so Dr. Bill Lumsden, I mean, a credit possibly of being one of the best whiskey makers of all time in all of whiskey. In terms of whiskies that have been written down, in terms of like these are whiskies that have been created by one person, and in terms of the brain of him, at least, yeah, some of the best whiskies ever have come out of Dr. Bill. But then next to him, he's got Dr. Gillian MacDonald. And Gillian MacDonald is unbelievable. She was actually used to work at Penderyn Distillery in Wales.
Yeah.
And I think at the time she was one of, if not the only, female head distiller in the UK. And she came on board character-wise completely different to Bill, but just as creative. and the consistency and sensory palate she's got is unbelievable.
Mm.
And the way that she describes whiskey is what I really love. You know how sometimes, Leanne, you can get it where you get someone that gets a bit carried away on tasting notes. They can go somewhere like, here's all the things I'm getting, and they ring off like 15 or 16 different aromas and flavors, and it could be accurate. What I love about Gillian, she knows all of that, but she's able to, excuse the pun, distill it down into just a few lines, and it's like it all kind of makes sense. So you've got Gillian there. Now, the third member is quite new and probably the most fascinating to actually describe. So you've got this person who's joined it called Lauren Milligan, and she only joined last year, and I got to meet her actually only 2 weeks into the job when I was over in Scotland. And she does have a scientific background for sure. I think you do need that to be a whiskey maker. But when it comes to her sensory palate, this idea of being like a super taster, you know, they give these like the challenges. She herself is actually rated as one of those. So she was brought on board for that. But the interesting thing, she had like 5 interviews. And from each of them, Gillian said, the reason why I think we like you is that in all of your interviews, you say you don't like whiskey. And it's jarring, right? But think about this. Bill and Gillian know how to make whiskey for whiskey people. They've been doing that. They win awards every year. We do that. Imagine having someone on board that can make whiskey for someone that doesn't necessarily like whiskey. In a backwards way, it kind of makes sense. But Lauren is unbelievable. Like, I had a dram of Lysanta with her last year. I think it might have been her first time ever trying it. And she's doing her tasting notes on her first thing. I'm like that. I've been drinking Lysanta and enjoying Lysanta for a long time. And you trying it possibly for the first time have put me 100% to shame. So, yeah. So we're in good hands for the future.
Man, that sounds cool.
And of course, with that, they do have their new facility to play around with as well. And I was going to ask Leanne, so when you were at Glenmorangie, what did you think of the new distillery, the Lighthouse?
Well, they were doing some construction, so I didn't get to go in, but I got to see from the outside. And so, you know, from the thumbnail, and I'm gonna post some stuff on social so people can see. But because being a little under the weather, sometimes we have a little slideshow. It wasn't happening this week, y'all, with all this, but like in the thumbnail, this beautiful, you know, old, gorgeous building of Glenmorangie, and right next to it is this glass lighthouse. It's this glass tower. It's this big rectangle glass metal, and you look through it, and there's these gorgeous stills that you can see. And basically, it's an incubator. It's a way to be able to work on an innovation without tying up your production equipment, right? I mean, you've got this this pretty big. I mean, it's not like a dinky size anything. I mean, they're full size everything that I could see, you know, so that you can, like, full runs could be made, and like you could be running things simultaneously, and still not have to worry about, you know, bumping your production. So the bean counters, your accountants will be a little bit happier about that. You know, what do you mean you're going to stop production to decide you want to experiment on something? Well, now literally they have a glass house playground to do that.
That's it. And that's, you describe it perfectly. That's the way I describe it as well, the playground. And it's, I mean, the 2 pot stills that are in there are actually the same shape and size as what would be in the regular still house at Glenmorangie. That means you actually know, for a little bit of consistency, what can happen. But then there's the variables. So one of them, for example, has got a water cooling jacket around it, which can theoretically expand the height of the still.
Yeah.
And another thing, and that can be switched on and off. The other part of it is the spirit still also has a purifier. So for some of the Ardbegians that are there, the purifier is something that we talk about an awful lot, because essentially it polishes the spirit, you know, gives it the additional more reflux there.
Yeah.
The purifier traps the heavy vapors, allows them to be fed back into the pot still for that extra bit of distillation. So you've got water cooling jacket, purifier, but even amongst that, you've got this lever that can switch between stainless steel and copper shell and tube condensers. So at Glenmorangie usually is copper. Again, think of the light floral spirit, but then a lever switches over and then it can be stainless steel, allowing this very meaty style of spirit to come through. And the fact that there's all of this, and there's a lot more variables that can happen, but the fact that you could potentially make a whiskey that you have made consistently at Glenmorangie in the regular stillhouse for a long time, do a different run in the Lighthouse and change up, that itself gives you a huge amount of potential, right? But what if you don't just use barley? Like this here can use rye, wheat, corn, all sorts of grain, and it's there not to make whiskey necessarily, it's there to make spirit. So you could potentially have a new category being created. And the backbone of it is the backbone of the spirit can be created now. The experiments and the trial runs can get done now. Because maybe in 10 years' time, there is another whiskey flood. Maybe in 10 years' time, people aren't drinking single malt Scotch whisky like they are. And, I want to stay in a job. So I'm hoping that people are. But if not, you know what? The trials are getting done just now at Glenmorangie to see if there's a way that maybe we can still create this incredible historic distillery that's there. If it's maybe not full capacity for single malt, maybe there's other things that we can do to, again, kind of revolutionize the industry.
Well, I would say there's going to be quite a few people who might start a revolution if you quit making single malt whiskey.
I don't always be single malt. There will always be single malt. But having that extra facility there, like the Lighthouse, to do other things is so important. And I say it at my tastings, what I got to try when I was there. I best not say this when it's being recorded, Leanne, but very exciting things. When I was there last year, such exciting things were being created. So here, maybe 5, 6, 10 years time, we'll get to see the fruition.
That'll be interesting to see, and to keep your options open. It would be interesting to see like a Scotch whiskey that came out, like a grain and malt whiskey, wonder what that would be like. Huh.
Well, I think it's limitless potential because of the Lighthouse. So if anyone does have any ideas, just email them to Dr. Bill and Gillian and Lauren. Maybe they'll add it and we'll throw things at the wall and we'll see what sticks.
Yeah. Jennifer said, "You had me at heavy vapors." I
promised Jennifer we're going to bring some Ardbeg to Victoria for you coming in January. Don't worry.
Oh, well, we do have some bad news because we are not going to be able to come this year.
Oh no!
We're very, very sad. But it was me going to Glasgow, and then she's actually going to be going to Springbank School. But we will find you another way. we will make it happen.
I tell you what, Leanne, the amazing US team you've got there with David, Cameron, Daniel, Travis, Lisa, and the rest of them. Like they've always said, I'm welcome down there. The last time I was in the States for work, I actually got to go to Maine. I got to go to York, Maine. Okay. And I got to be part of our Beyond the Cast program there.
Oh, cool.
So that's the last time I've worked in the States there, but it's a wee while ago now. So I'll definitely get in touch. Maybe we can get myself to the States, to New Orleans, and we can meet up there.
Tales of the Cocktail is in July. It's hotter than hell, but we're always in air conditioned space. And Went Hennessy did a beautiful, beautiful place in a gorgeous area. It was wonderful. But yeah.
I wait the invite.
No, it was great. You'll have to get you down for Tales. And if you come any other time than the summer, you can get to the swamp. We'll take you for a swamp tour.
Yeah.
I promise you'll live
well,
through.
I think we'll have a promise. Like if you do not feed me to alligators, I will not feed you to bears.
No, there you go. There we go. I'm all for that. Good to see Town for a Dram is in such a pivotal dram in his whiskey journey. Gregor can honestly say there's always a Glenmo on his shelf. Please, 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 please put some product out targeting us. Whiskey geeks. Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting that one because I think it's definitely like a fair comment. We actually have had some that have been, for example, high ABV in the past, and we spoke already, Leanne, about the Astar being that high ABV whiskey from our own barrels, the Cabal Estate, maybe not as high, but still having our local barley equivalent is great. But also as well, when I was talking about the yeast strains we've got, we actually released a whiskey which was created 100% from that Saccharomyces diamoth yeast strain, and it was like the high ABV version of it. And we're thinking the nerds are going to love this. And then I started chatting to them. They're saying, "Oh yeah, do you have anything high ABV on the shelf?" I'm like, "Yeah, this one right here. Have you not noticed?" So maybe it was the whiskey was there. Maybe our marketing team didn't do the right job, or maybe it's just people don't expect it. Maybe people just don't expect us to do it. But we do
Yeah.
have a lot of nerdy whiskeys for sure that are coming down the pipeline.
Yeah. Well, and some of the samples that I was gifted when I was there are these rare casks. So those are one-offs that, I mean, like, where do these even happen? You know, like mainly just at the distillery or at
Yeah,
fine shops, because this isn't sitting on the shelf in my local store.
no, the rare cast ones there. The experimentation side and the innovative releases aren't just for ones that are on the shelf.
Yeah.
These are not necessarily whiskies that are only from say 10 to 12, 15 years old. We do have quite a lot of expressions which are still experimental,
Right.
but they're older expressions, and maybe some of them are only limited runs batches at the distillery. So we do release a lot at the distillery. They're not always distillery exclusive. Certain markets, within certain markets,
Yeah.
sometimes get a very small allocation of them. But because they're in such high demand, a lot of the time when they're at the distillery, they kind of sell through at a decent level. But some, say, markets within markets do sort of have these. And these are usually, not always, but usually older expressions or some very unusual barrels where there's very short supply of them. And it's to the extent maybe wouldn't warrant a big release,
Right.
like across to actually do it. So essentially, we kind of not secretly, but like kind of quietly, just put them on the shelf, and a lot of people will navigate. Even the packaging of them, Leanne, you may have remembered that, but the packaging isn't too extravagant on them. There are these like amazing light wooden boxes, just a little bit of etching on there. We kind of find that with these, as much as a lot of collectors do want them, for some of these ones, these are bottles that people crack open. They want to enjoy them. So the packaging isn't as important, perhaps, as what some of our releases are.
Gotcha. Well, I'm looking forward to diving into them, and one of them is the Amontillado, but I'm trying to remember if it's that one you were talking about or if it's
I think it's a different one. I
a
think I know that one
12-year
there.
Amontillado.
Yeah, I think if it's that one, I think that was a full maturation, perhaps, an Amontillado, which is quite an unusual thing for Glenmorangie to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think it would have been a higher alcohol by volume that's on there as well. But those ones there are actually, so they're hand selected by either our distillery manager, Ed Tom, or it would be whenever Bill, Gillian, and Lauren, when the team are actually up at the distillery, they'll say, we're looking for one or two releases coming out. And those are hand selected, like by either Ed at the distillery or the whiskey creation team. It's the reason why you kind of see their signature that's on there, like hand selected on there. So,
yeah, man, they were beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Carlos is asking about the private edition releases. Was that something that was similar to this, or maybe in between that and core?
Yeah, so the private edition was a series of 10 whiskies, which were the kind of showcase to the interesting techniques and ingredients, perhaps, that Glenmorangie were playing around with. So I mentioned already with the Glenmorangie Alta, which was the release with our very own yeast strain. That was actually private edition number 10. So that kind of wrapped up the series. But some of the ones that some people may have got in their collection from there would be the famous ones such as Glenmorangie Sonauta, Campanta, RTN, one of our previous whiskey makers, Brendan McCarran, that was his favourite of the range. But some of them have been unusual barley varietals, such as Maris Otter. We've used that. Some of the different unusual barrels, of course. We had a fantastic one, which was released. I'm trying to think of when it was released now, because it's going back a bit. This is when I'm getting a bit old. But there was one that was released, Glenmorangie Spios. And I've seen it in the comments there. And that was a whiskey fully matured in rye American whiskey casks, which seems to be a bit more commonplace now. But at the time, wasn't really something that people were doing. So a bit of a showcase for experimentation. And then we transferred into the A Tale of series, where it's more of a concept first, and then how the whiskey makers get there. It's A Tale of Cake, Tale of Winter, Tale of the Forest, and the newest one, A Tale of Tokyo. And then, of course, next year there will be a new one, A Tale of something.
So now I had the Tokyo. I had when Andrew met us at the Melody Bar in London at the end of our summer tour. We had the Tail of Forest there. I enjoyed that. It was interesting. Um, but yeah, you can still find those like here and there. Um, not they kind of went fast. Tail cake went super fast. Um, and you're not afraid to maybe even make a cocktail with it. It's not too bad. I think there's sometimes we get a little precious about our whiskey and mixing it. It is very warm down here in the summer, and having a Scotch highball in July is awesome.
I mean, the thing, Leanne, is that you probably notice a lot of what I say is I stole this thing from someone else. So I actually stole this from one of the Scots from Tomatin. He
Well,
said,
I hear that's frugalness is a trait of the Scots.
Yeah.
So.
But here's the thing: is that Scott was hosting a tasting for the Hit Fast Hiking Club, and I was sitting in on it. So Scott Adamson, and he said this brilliant thing: is that think of how many drams you've got in your bottle, and for ourselves in North America, you're thinking about maybe 25, 26 ounces. If you were to drink them all the same way, it's a waste of money. So treat at least one of that ounces to do something different with. And you never know. Okay. Maybe it's something that you never had.
Different experience.
Yeah. So I myself, I would love to say that was me that made that up because I think it's brilliant. But hats off to Scott Adamson for Tomatin. I use that at whiskey tastings all the time, and he gets no credit, just so you know. But I'm getting recorded now, so I better.
Okay. I'll send him a link to it. Let him know that you cited him. For sure. Oh man. Well, this has been tremendous. We've gone through quite a bit. Because I think and this, beyond your delightful personality, and I just absolutely adore you. And like I said, I mean, we met very briefly, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've known him all my life. Just getting beyond the ones on the shelf, that's what I wanted people to know more about. Yes, I sing Glenmorangie's praises because I think it's a damn good dram. But I think there's some other things that we can, kind of explore, looking at different ways of using the whiskey. You talked a little bit more too about the innovations and things that Glenmorangie kind of did to set the bar for the industry altogether, and I think part of that too is the finishing part, where you're taking like the tin, keeping it for that amount of time, and then putting it in a port cask or then putting it in a sherry cask, because I don't know that a lot of that was done before you all started, right?
It's always where I get a bit in trouble. So certain people in the company will say Glenmorangie were the first to ever do the idea of cask finishing. Some will say we were first or second. So there's always been this debate between ourselves and Balvenie about who is first. In my head, both are pioneers of the method. Yeah. I think in terms of
there's enough room at the top.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the interesting thing is that, I mean, some of our company will say adamantly we were the first, and maybe we were the first to ever release a whiskey on the shelf that says cask finish.
Yeah,
there's that. But the experimentation by both distilleries is something that should be applauded.
Yeah.
The interesting thing though is that cask finishing is something that used to be ridiculed. Like going back to some of the books that I've read, like I can't remember which book it is, but it's almost like they gave one of our whiskies a really good rating or description, but then said, but it's a cask finish, therefore it's inferior whiskey. Now, if you think of that now, it's just bonkers, right, Leanne?
Right.
Just like, you think of it now, it's just a normal technique. And nowadays, it's not just whiskey. You think of the idea of rums. So there's a famous rum company out there, and every one of their rums is cask finished in brandy barrels. You've got different, so brandy, they're rums, different spirits all across the world. I've even got a gin here at home, which is cask finished. So if you think of this idea of cask finishing, it's beyond whiskey now. And the fact that two amazing distilleries in Scotland started it. And the one thing I would say about Glenmorangie, the reason why we get that nickname, the pioneers of the method, is we've stuck with it all the way through. Like, you
Right.
know, in terms of our core
Wasn't a
range,
fad.
it wasn't a fad, exactly. And I think that's it. I mean, if you think of the Glenmorangie 12, 14 Nectar d'Or, not only are they cask finishes, in terms of the port cask, like Glenmorangie being, we believe, the first distillery to release a port cask finish, a Sauterne cask finish. These are things that Glenmorangie are proud of, that we ourselves have pioneered. Yeah. And some of the special releases we've had is something we kind of like always kind of go back to some extent, because you know that the whiskey makers know what they're doing. And it's not a trend we're doing. If anything, we started the trend. So we can't say that we're following a trend when we started it.
Yeah, that's true. Carlos brings up, would like to see a rum finish cask.
Yeah, there was actually one years ago. Unfortunately, I've not got to try it. There was a 12 years old that got released, and I don't know the exact year. It must have been in the late 90s into the early 2000s. And there'll probably be some comment that I'll make later on under my YouTube name. But I think it was called like the like golden rum cask finish.
Okay.
It's long gone now, but at the time, Glenmorangie were experimenting with such unusual barrels. And that Caribbean cask from Balvenie is a brilliant, brilliant whiskey.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe perhaps if they experimented with the rum barrels, maybe the flavour profile didn't suit us. But obviously the Balvenie one's a great whiskey.
Because that's what I was just like trying to do the math in my head. It's like, what would that flavor be on your spirit? You know, that's the interesting thing. Just kind of thinking about that.
Try to get my camera back here. Okay, I'm back.
Okay, very good.
I've had a few for a while. The hiccups I've had, it's absolutely fine. I'm feel bad for the viewers that thought they got rid of my face for a while, but
we're all good. You're still adorable. I was educating some of my Scottish friends over last week and behind a cord that that the southern folks we don't get drunk, we get adorable. But if you get precious, it's time to go home. You're not quite precious yet. But I know I've kept you a good longer than we anticipated. But now, any other words of love for Glenmorangie? You know what I think about it, and I do terribly appreciate your time and being on today.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and like having someone that's like already like kind of like already a lover of Glenmorangie. It's far from some of my jobs where I'm on there to do a sales pitch. It's just like hanging out with a friend who's already.
Yeah, people sitting here going, "Tell me, you just make me drink it, damn it!" No.
No, but it's an absolute pleasure here, and also as well, seeing some of the amazing comments and some of the questions have been fantastic here. There seems, I think the communities across the world, you know, having people like yourself, Leanne, to bring people together about it is absolutely wonderful, because the community is the most important part of Scotch whisky. You know, there's nothing without the people.
It really is. I mean, it's just it would be kind of sad if we didn't have everybody here tonight. I mean, not that I didn't enjoy talking to you out on the World Wide Web. It's just that it enhances, it brings people together, you know, and especially, you know, especially you think about the holidays. We talked about this a lot this past week in Glasgow about, you know, just this box, this whole platform helping keep so many people together during lockdown, you know, as a lifeline at that. And, you know, and you put something as, you know, you put alcohol with that can go good or bad, you know, depending on amounts and respectfulness of it. You know, the community is what kept people together, you know, and that's what we just loved. I mean, dare I say, I didn't have very many tastes at the festival because you were constantly stopping and talking to people, you know?
Yeah.
And that's okay. You know, I was really happy with the whiskey that I was able to taste. Things I've never ever had before, probably won't ever have again, you know, but the conversations were just as tasty as this one was, as it was back in January when we got to meet you the first time. But yeah, and we're definitely going to have you back talking about Ardbeg, because that's one thing I learned when I got to Isla. It's not Ardbeg, it's Ardbeg. When in Rome, you do as the Romans, and it's Ardbeg. Everybody says it that way there. but as long as it's pouring, I'm happy. I've got a nice long big shelf of it back here. We can talk about all kinds of things.
We'll have to get Jennifer involved as well, because
We
I
will
think
have to get
she knows more
Jennifer.
than I do about our bag. She probably potentially loves it a bit more than me as
She
well.
does,
So.
and she's so articulate about it. Let me tell you. I mean, she's just so very good at that. It was funny because even in Glasgow, I said something about her, and he goes, "Oh, that's your friend that's on all the time." I'm like, hell yeah, she's on all the time. I got I got to do something to keep people on. No, but I brought home a bottle. Speaking of for discussion.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
yeah, so we'll have to discuss that one. I'll have to make sure she gets some, and then I don't know, if you still have access to that. If not,
I'll get on the blower to Dr. Bill. I'm sure.
okay. Like,
We can
so
spend
when's
one.
your next trip over?
Good question. I think we usually try and get us over once a year. Brand ambassador team in the States have been speaking about it of going over, so maybe I'll piggyback on that there. But every
Yeah.
time I go over, Leanne, it's absolutely wonderful. You know, it took me so long to get my visa for Canada, and within 2 weeks of this job, they sent me back to Scotland. But when you're there, the distillery staff just treat you as family. And I remember
Amazing.
actually, I remember I went to Glenmorangie the first time after being in the company, and it's one of my most memorable experiences. So I remember going there, and it was, oh yeah, you're Brian from Canada, and you know they were just taking me around as if I was family, and I was like, this is absolutely brilliant. I went back to Canada and I started doing a couple of whiskey tastings. Then I realised that everyone gets treated that way, so it's not just me. It's like anyone that comes over gets treated like family,
Well,
and
you're
it's like, oh, cool.
special, but
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
take
yeah. My fragile ego took a hit, but at the same time, it does show you like
yeah.
we're in an industry and community that doesn't just stop at us. Even people at the distilleries themselves, they really look after everyone. So,
Yeah.
cheers to that.
Well, my time there was spectacular. Handheld all the way around, and could not have asked for a better experience. So, one of those where it's one where I'll say, if you're anywhere close, you need to stop there. There's some distilleries you can just keep going, but that one, not only just the location, the tall stills. The stills are a cathedral to copper. That is what that is. It's you walk into that room, it looks like the bottom of a boat, the arched, ceiling, and these tall as giraffe, copper stills that just look like you're in church. Is the best way I could put that. It's just absolutely stunning. And then the people were so very, very nice. So I do appreciate your help in being able to tour that, considering they weren't doing tours that time of the year. Yeah, so thanks again for that, friend. I really do appreciate it.
I'll do anything to keep your friendship, Leanne. Just so you know.
You got it, boo. It's all good. It
We're on
is.
good terms? Fantastic.
Bry, thank you so much. Everybody on Instagram, follow him, Whiskey Bry. He's absolutely delightful. You'll see him with a bottle over his shoulder a lot of times, but always a smile on his face. Thank you, friend. I really do appreciate it. Hang around a second. I'll say bye to you in a bit.
All right. Thanks so much, Leanne. Thanks very much, everyone. Slanjaba.
Thanks, friend. Oh gosh, I hope y'all have enjoyed that as much as I have. It's wish I could have kept up a bit more with the comments, but just good people making good whiskey, all of those kind of things. But yeah, so I'm going to finish this a star, say bye to my friend Bry. I hope y'all all have a very wonderful, blessed Thanksgiving. Enjoy the time with your people, your friends, your family, your found family. Have a nice dram. Enjoy yourselves. And I'm so very thankful for each and every one of you. And I will see you all next time, next week. Yeah, on Scotch on the Bayou. Till then, Slanji, y'all.